Hello, everybody. This is Giancarlo Aulino, and I am happy to be joined by my guest today. He is the voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Joe Bowen. Hello, Joe. Welcome back to Beyond the Game.
My pleasure. How are you today?
Doing very good, Joe. How about you?
Absolutely perfect. Thank you.
We're going to get right into it here. The Toronto Maple Leafs and Boston Bruins played in their second Game 7 in the last 5 years. What went wrong for the Leafs this time around?
Well, a number of things, obviously, in the game. Things that didn't go well were the goaltending wasn't as good as it had been. I didn't think Frederik Andersen had a strong game, particularly in the third period. Obviously, a lot of turnovers and opportunities that really weren't, attention to detail wasn't there. But I think, Giancarlo, the other aspect was that the Leafs didn't play well in the first two games. And Boston had played hard all the way down the stretch with a busy schedule, a really tough schedule, actually, trying to catch Tampa. And they were ready to go, and they had the bit in their mouth when the series started. And the Leafs really didn't, because they had been somewhat home and cooled out, I think, for almost a month. Now, they played well in those games, but a lot of them were against teams that weren't in the postseason. And so maybe the intensity level wasn't as high as it needed to be. And the Leafs found out certainly after Game 1 that it had to be better. They played a little bit better in Game 2, but still didn't win. And then really we're up against it for the rest of the series.
As you brought up there, both teams had their fair share of ups and downs. In terms of the salary cap, though, the Leafs were structured quite well. Patrick Marleau came in July. Guys like JVR, Bozak, and Leo Komarov in the final years of their deal. So it was like having that trade deadline acquisition for the entire season as opposed to just like a couple months. With that in mind, though, do you feel that this playoff run was maybe a missed opportunity for the Leafs?
Well, it's, when you're in and you have a chance and you've played as well as they have, it's obviously a missed opportunity. And you really don't know how many you're going to get. It's not like you can just say, oh, well, the window here is another 5 or 6 years, so within there that'll happen. Well, lots of times bad breaks, whatever, hot teams, hot goalies. So when you do get an opportunity to get in the postseason and you had a record number of points, 105, and you've made some moves, it is there. I think that to have thought that maybe last year was a bit of a bonus that they actually got in the postseason, maybe ahead of schedule. Had that not happened, then this year would have been, everybody would have been tickled pink that they got in and then went 7 games in the first round. So you have to kind of take a look at it. But having said that, once you do get in the postseason, the window of opportunity is there, and you better make the most of it. Look what the Vegas Golden Knights are doing.
For those just joining us on Vibe 105, this is Beyond the Game, and we're speaking with Toronto Maple Leafs play-by-play announcer Joe Bowen. Joe, we're going to shift gears a little bit here, highlight some of the positives of this playoff run, because, it wasn't all doom and gloom as some people in the media or even some fans make it out to be. This young core of the Leafs, they pushed the Capitals, who were favored to win the Cup last year, they pushed them to 6 games. This year, they pushed a really good Boston Bruins team with Stanley Cup winners to 7 games. For next year, though, do you feel this will be something that they can look at as a positive going forward? Or are they still in that rebuilding frame where they need that veteran voice in the room to help them out?
Well, you always need that. However, if they have Marleau coming back, they're going to have some veterans that are going to be a part of that. The kids are getting older and are going to be asked to take more responsibility. Nazem Kadri is a veteran player now. What happens in the off season, we'll have to wait and see how they augment or change the lineup because of free agency and various other things. But, you learn through these things, and then you have to try to adjust to what happened. And, they've had a couple of instances now with a 6-game series and a lot of overtime with Washington. They had the disappointment of this 7-game series with Boston. But they have to learn how to play in the postseason and how to adjust to those kinds of situations going forward. So they're always going to need some veteran leadership, but all of a sudden now you're seeing that these kids are getting older and they're going to be asked to take a more aggressive role, if for the lack of a better term, going forward here as they go into next year.
Joel, last time we spoke, we were talking about the Leafs choosing a new captain, and you felt that maybe Morgan Rielly or Auston Matthews could take over for that role. Now, with the experience that these young players have gained and also the young veterans that they've become, like Nazem Kadri, do you think that the time is right to name a Leafs captain for the 2018-19 season, or would you prefer the Leafs maybe hold off on that decision for another year?
I think that they'll name one, and I wouldn't be surprised that it's Auston Matthews if he's willing to accept that kind of responsibility. I think it won't be thrust on him. It'll be talked about. But I would think that they've gone a number of years now without a captain, and I think that you do have to have someone who is the face of the franchise, who has to kind of carry the load. And if Matthews decides upon himself that maybe he's not ready at this particular point, then I think other people like Riley or like Kadri would be involved. But I think that next year will probably be a year that the Leafs would have a captain.
Yeah, just to follow up on that too, because as you know, being around the team for so long, once that C is on the jersey, fans, members of the media, they put all this pressure on that guy, and especially here in Toronto, a real diehard hockey market. Like, I remember as a kid, even Matt Sundin, it's crazy to even say, but Sundin was even criticized at times of not being a leader. Phaneuf was criticized at times, like Kessel. He can't be a guy who can be a part of that leadership group. What is it about Matthews or Riley that you see in them that they can handle pressure of having the C on their jersey?
Well, part of it is the fact that they have watched and they have seen instances like you described in the case of Morgan Riley. And I think over 2 years of being here, Auston Matthews has also at least seen how it operates, seen what is probably going to be expected of him. And so it's not sort of just walking in the door and then all of a sudden having it dumped on you. So I think that under those circumstances, they will be educated enough to realize what is exactly expected from them and how it works out. But it'll be a difficult situation, I suppose, in some instances if the person isn't able to handle it. But I think that because they have at least experienced the kind of attention that this position would obviously have, they can make it an educated decision on their own, whether they want to do this or whether they would rather not. So it's obviously a very prestigious position, and it's something that they will very much have to accept. But I think that because they've had at least the education of it, it should work out fine.
Yeah, I agree there. Once again, for those just joining us on Vibe 105, we're speaking with the voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Joe Bowen. Joe, before we wrap up, you called your milestone 3,000th game last year. As you look back on your career from Game 1 to 3,000, what are some of your favorite Leaf moments that you called, and in what ways were those moments special for you?
Well, they're all special, I guess. Obviously, the people that you work with, and in this instance, the players are outstanding individuals and lots of fun to be around. Obviously, playoff games are very intense, and they're a lot more fun, I think, to call and have something happen. The Nicky Borschewski goal, or the Leafs hanging on to beat Ottawa. Matt Sundin scoring late to send a game to overtime against Carolina. Matt's game against Calgary, where he had his 1,000th point and won the game in overtime. And then Auston Matthews 4 goals just the other year, a couple of seasons ago. All very special, and just because of the way things worked out in each of the games, you just hope that you get the call right and that it's a lot of fun, because it's watching these guys is a very special treat.
Well, Joe, unfortunately, we're out of time. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to chat with us here at Beyond the Game, and we wish you all the best for next season.
Thank you very much, Giancarlo. Good talking to you.
Thanks a lot. That was the voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Joe Bowen. Now, we're going to send it back to the studio for more Beyond the Game right here on Vibe 105.
Hi, this is Joe Bowen, and you're listening to Beyond the Game. Joe!